Linda, starting tomorrow, our parents are moving in with us. I bought the house with the yard, so no complaining. If you're not a fan, you might end up sleeping outside. On moving day, Michael, my husband, dropped the bomb about living with his parents. He also decided on this house without consulting me and left me to handle all the house hunting. It's like he sees me as a maid or something, thinking I don't have a say. So I said, fine, then I'll sleep in the yard from now on. But don't be surprised by who joins me. Why are you being so stubborn? Just do as you're told, like always. Don't worry, you won't regret it. Sleep tight, but don't choke on your own spit, okay? Those last words are on you, I replied. You'll regret this, mark my words. With that, I started getting ready, picturing Michael's worried face. The next day, he came to the yard and immediately frowned when he saw the tent I had set up. He stopped in his tracks, looking puzzled as he approached. Linda, why are you pitching a tent? You said I'd sleep in the yard, so I'm just using my camping tent. It's spacious out here, I replied calmly, stepping out of the tent with a smile. Michael frowned even more and muttered, You'll regret this. Sleep however you like, but don't say I didn't warn you. He didn't think I'd actually sleep outside. You're ridiculous, you know. Even if you like camping, setting up a tent in your own yard is just embarrassing. Michael mocked with a smirk. But I stood my ground, ready for my comeback. My husband still had that smirk on his face, but inside I was quietly amused. Just then, my in-laws arrived. They seemed taken aback by the sight of the tent. Whether they understood what was going on or not, I felt a bit relieved, hoping their presence might calm my husband down a bit. When I greeted them, they looked puzzled and asked about the tent. Linda, why is there a tent in the yard? Are you planning a camping trip? They inquired, clearly curious. Before I could respond, my husband jumped in. Oh, Linda wanted to sleep outside. She's a big fan of camping, you know, he said smoothly, lying through his teeth. I couldn't believe how composed he was while deceiving them, but my in-laws accepted it without much fuss, knowing my love for camping. Just be careful not to catch a cold, they said with concern before heading into the house. Now go make dinner and don't say anything unnecessary to my parents, all right? My husband resumed his usual commanding tone after the in-laws left. But I shot back, sure thing. Cook for 5, then. Can a housewife even count? It's just the 4 of us. You, me, and my parents. Stop being dense and start cooking. You're getting on my nerves, Michael grumbled as he made his way to the new house. Suddenly, he froze in shock as a man emerged from the tent, unzipping it slowly. The yard fell silent. My husband's face registered a mix of confusion and astonishment. He tried to speak but couldn't find the words. Sorry to intrude, the man said. Why is Jim here? What's happening? This man was my husband's boss, Jim, someone my husband couldn't underestimate. It was understandable that he was taken aback to see Jim coming out of the tent where I had slept. Could it be that Linda and Jim are having an affair? Michael's thoughts raced as he remembered my words from yesterday. Don't regret whoever I sleep with. What do you mean? That's not possible, Michael stammered. Jim chimed in calmly. I just got here about 30 minutes ago. I also enjoy camping. I was simply waiting in the tent until Masayoshi woke up. Michael's face drained of color as if he could hear the gravity of the situation. Jim continued, I had heard from Linda before, but I didn't want to believe it until now, that you were hiding your true nature and mistreating your wife. Jim's tone carried a hint of anger. Panic swept over Michael's face, and his body began to tremble. No, that's not it. I was just being a bit firm. It's not mistreatment or anything, just firm. He stuttered, but his words were unconvincing. There was a clear tone of malice and superiority in his voice. Jim's voice grew increasingly heated. What had Linda done to deserve this? The arrogance Michael had displayed earlier, mocking me, had vanished. He seemed like a mouse cornered by a cat, frozen in fear. I can't believe this, Michael. You do great work at the company, but to treat your wife like this, I'm frankly disappointed, Jim stated firmly. I never meant to mistreat my wife. I've just been stressed lately with work not going well, and I guess I took it out on her. My husband stammered, sweat dripping down his face as he scrambled for excuses, his mind racing. Despite Jim's accusations, my husband was highly respected at work, not just for his job performance, but also for his supposed character. If you didn't know better, you'd never believe he could treat his wife poorly. But Jim and I both knew the truth, the secrets my husband was hiding. And Jim's visit today was connected to those very secrets. Then Jim quietly mentioned a name, Lily Smith. You're familiar with her, right? Yes, she works at a client I handle. Is there an issue with her? My husband replied cautiously. She's my wife, Jim stated calmly. Immediately, my husband's eyes widened in shock and confusion. He was rendered speechless as his expression shifted from surprise to fear. Jim stared coldly. Gathering his courage, my husband began to speak hesitantly. Lily is Jim's wife. But that can't be. You have different last names. Lily uses her maiden name at work. It's easier for everyone, as she's referred to by the name they know. Many women at her workplace do the same, Jim explained. I didn't know anything. I've made a terrible mistake. In truth, my husband had been having an affair with Lily Shimamoto, unaware she was his boss's wife. Jim had come today to confront him about the affair. I was truly stunned when I learned about your affair, especially that the other woman was my wife. This isn't something that can be shrugged off as a misunderstanding. Regardless of who the other person is, having an affair is unacceptable, Jim said firmly. Turning to me, Jim continued, You knew about this, Linda. How long have you known? Since around the time Michael started to withdraw after learning about my infertility, I responded. The catalyst for my husband's mistreatment was my infertility diagnosis. While undergoing treatments, my husband was unsupportive and distanced himself, leaving me feeling alone. One day, when he claimed to be on a business trip, I accidentally witnessed him leaving for a romantic getaway. That was when I decided to investigate his affair, eventually discovering that his mistress was his boss's wife. Empowered by this revelation, a thirst for vengeance ignited within me. Later, when my husband floated the idea of buying a house in the countryside, his proposal became the perfect catalyst for my plan. I closely monitored his actions and meticulously crafted my strategy for retribution, leading to this moment. Michael, you claimed you wanted children, so I redoubled my efforts with infertility treatments. But instead of standing by me, you ignored me completely. You left me for Lily, didn't you? You just admitted you never meant to mistreat me, but you were doing it on purpose, weren't you? You were pushing me to my breaking point, aiming for a divorce. Keeping me in the dark about living with your parents was all part of the torment, wasn't it? What do you have to say? Every word dripped with fury. My husband stumbled over his response, clearly shaken. With a piercing stare, I locked eyes with him while Jim's gaze conveyed a mixture of disappointment and disdain. My husband's face turned pale, and his body shook, but he pushed himself to speak adamantly. I admit I may have been tough on Linda, but I strongly reject the accusations of an affair. It's just a baseless claim from Linda and Jim. There's no evidence. Right, Linda? You mentioned a romantic trip, but I simply ran into Lily by chance during a business trip. We had meetings and went for drinks because of work, but there was no affair. I understand. Indeed, there's no evidence. We haven't prepared any, right? There's no proof, he continued defiantly. But you're definitely having an affair. Admit it and apologize to Jim first. Then Linda, I snapped. I didn't have an affair. If you want me to confess, show me the evidence. Don't act all high and mighty and order me around. My husband erupted in anger, his words aimed at me without restraint. The tension in the air crackled with his fiery rage, a clear sign he felt cornered with nowhere to hide his true self. Unknowingly, he was digging his own grave. What's the matter, Michael? Why are you shouting like that? It's echoing inside the house, I remarked, bewildered by his outburst. Oh, isn't that gentleman over there Jim? I'm terribly sorry for causing a disturbance. Actually, I came today to discuss Michael's affair, Jim announced calmly. The in-laws were stunned by Jim's words. They stood frozen, mouths open in disbelief, as a heavy silence settled over the scene. After a tense 10 seconds, Michael's father spoke cautiously. Is it true about the affair, Michael? I find it hard to believe Jim would joke about something like this. Can you explain so we can understand? Dad, it's not true. I'm innocent. Jim is just assuming I'm guilty without any evidence. I swear I haven't done anything like that. You can trust me, Michael protested. Linda, what's happening? I don't understand anything, Michael's mother added. I'm sorry to have startled you, but what Jim is saying is true. Michael has been having an affair, and the other woman is Jim's wife. Now, I will prove it, I stated firmly. With that, I pointed to a specific spot. Michael and the in-laws followed my gaze, but all they saw was the tent in the yard. Confusion etched their faces. Then they were about to witness something shocking. I'm so sorry, Lily apologized as she emerged from the tent. Jim hadn't arrived alone. Lily had accompanied him. Thus, the entire conversation had been overheard by Lily as well. Meeting Lily for the first time, the in-laws were startled to see an unfamiliar woman stepping out of the tent. Meanwhile, my husband was profoundly shaken by the realization that his affair partner had been nearby all along. We don't need evidence, Michael, I stated firmly. Lily has already fully admitted to the affair. Actually, we do have evidence, but having Lily confirm it seemed quicker. I also wanted to see your reaction, and you certainly revealed your true colors. Unknowingly, you were digging your own grave. Hey, stop joking around. I just realized it's uninhabitable, but I've been too frantic to notice. What are you going to do about this? I'm not doing anything, I replied calmly. You pushed the house hunting onto me, so I just followed your orders. You were the one who made the final decision to buy it, right? Is there a problem? The decision to purchase the house with a yard had been Michael's alone, yet he dumped the entire search onto me. At that point, I had already begun considering revenge, which led to my strategy of finding an intentionally defective house. I had done my research: uneven floors, ceiling cracks, poor door and window operations, all common indicators of a flawed property. Armed with a checklist, I went to the viewings and deliberately chose the house with the most issues. Michael's frantic reaction now confirmed my plan had worked perfectly. The only miscalculation was his secret plan to live there with my in-laws, which could have caused them great trouble. Thankfully, they had moved elsewhere, living peacefully away from him. Linda, help me out. I can't afford to move with the alimony payments. I've lost my job. There's also the fertility treatment. I truly regret everything. I shouldn't have cheated. I should have valued you more. So you only realized you were wrong after discovering you're infertile. Well, that's good for you, I said, my voice cutting. You should reflect on your regrets and start over. Good luck living alone. Wait, wait, wait. Weren't we married? Don't abandon me. Please listen to me. His self-centered remarks nearly pushed me to explode with anger, but I kept my composure. Done with him, I decided to make my stance crystal clear. Michael, do you remember what you said? A wife is not property to be discarded when no longer needed. Let me reiterate, you are no longer needed in my life. You're expendable. Live with your regrets forever. Goodbye. His voice continued pleading on the other end, but I hung up without a second thought. Blocking his number felt like closing the final chapter of a painful story. Michael probably learned the hard way that some actions are irreversible. As for me, I started a blog and created videos about camping, transforming my hobby into a side income. My days became filled with joy and purpose. Jim, now also divorced, had more free time. He occasionally joined me on camping trips or helped with my video projects. One evening, as we sat by a crackling campfire, I expressed my gratitude for his unwavering support. Jim, I'm truly grateful. You and your parents stood by me when I needed it most. Jim smiled warmly. Ignoring such a wonderful woman like you, Linda, Michael really baffled me. His words made my heart skip a beat. Though I brushed it off as a fleeting feeling, it lingered. It wasn't until years later that I realized the flutter in my heart was real. Yes, Jim and I eventually got married, but that's a story for another time.